Okay, night shift. So we're in open D, which I've been doing a lot of open D recently. So if you're doing these videos in chronological order, you get to stay in open D. So open D is D for the low string, the E string down a whole step to D. A is A, gets to stay at A. D gets to stay at D. G goes down a half step to F sharp. B goes down a whole step to A. And high E goes down a whole step to D. Get that chord. All right, so the intro, I guess, is kind of its own thing. So let's do the intro, but it's going to be similar to the verse and the chorus, if that's what we call these parts. Okay, so here's the intro. So the first chord, first finger on the third fret of the G string, of the third string, second finger on the fourth fret of the D string, the fourth string, and third finger on the fifth fret of the A string, the fifth string. This is just a D chord. So you strum this one. There's kind of generally for the strumming in the whole song, there's this kind of like a lot of downs, like this, sort of eighth note down strums, punctuated by these, by sometimes a down up. 1, 2, 3, 4. You know? I feel like in the intro, she does kind of a slower, like a something like that. I've already kind of forgotten it because I'm mixing it up with all the other, but there's something, maybe it's like that, sort of a down, 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 up, something like that. And there's a little bit, you know, you can listen for where the low strings and where the high strings are emphasized, right? So like here, maybe your first strum is on the lower strings, and then you do a higher string one, another higher string one, you know, lower string one, something like that. You can play around with it, but it's also fine if you just go, or if you do. You know, play around with that strumming. That's your first chord. You do it for 4 beats, for 1 bar, 2, 3, 4. Then you switch it to this. This is like a D major 7. This is going to come up a bunch more times. So you get to keep your first finger on the third fret of the G string, third string, have your second finger move to the fourth fret on the A string, the fifth string, and your third finger to the fourth fret on the D string, the fourth string. So you do 4 beats on this, 3, 4, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 on that, and then back to the first chord, back to the D for 4 beats for 1 measure, and then this weird chord. So this chord gets used a lot. It's like a kind of a G, like the bass goes to G when she plays like this. So second finger on the fifth fret of the D string, third finger on the fifth fret of the G string, pinky on the fifth fret of the E string, high E string, okay? First finger not doing anything. These 2 strings, the low strings, the 6th and 5th string, they're kind of dissonant, but I hear them in there, and it's kind of a cool sound. It's kind of, that's the sound. In other words, it's not this. It's really, you can hear those strings, I think. I hear them. So in the intro then, this goes for 2 bars or 8 beats. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Or 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Which is that exact thing is gonna happen a bunch more times. And when she goes to this chord, she often strums it this way. When it's 2 bars like that, it's 1, 2. These downs, and then down up. That down up is in the 4th beat. 1, 2, 3, 4, down up. 1, 2. It's the second half of the 4th beat. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Anyway, so that's a nice thing to get into, and we'll come up again in the verse. Okay, so the verse is going to start with this chord, that same D now it's going to switch to that D major 7 after only 2 beats. It'll be 1, 2, 3, 4. So 2 beats on this. And again, you can just do down, 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 or you could do it like a low, high kind of move. So you get this D for 2 beats, this D major 7 for 2 beats, and now this. So just a straight bar across the 2nd fret, which makes an E major chord. So if you use D major, this is an E major. So I'm using my 1st finger. You could use your 2nd finger or whatever. But she mostly plays low strings on this. This is going to be for a full bar. It's going to be for 4 beats. And it's mostly on the low strings. You got to hear those higher strings a little bit. So try to focus your strum on the low strings. For 4 beats from 1 bar, back to then the same exact thing. D chord for 2 beats, D major 7 for 2 beats, and then back to this chord, this G, with the 2nd finger on the 5th fret of the D, 3rd finger on the 5th fret of the G, and pinky on the 5th fret of the E. And now the trick in the verse is the first time it does this for 1 bar, and the 2nd time it does it for 2 bars. Everything else stays the same. So D major 7, E for a full bar. D major 7, G for 1 bar, 3, and then back, D major 7, E, and then D major 7, and then G for 2 bars, 2, 3, 4, 2. Okay, that makes sense? That's what the verse does. And the first verse does that whole thing 3 times. So that whole pattern, a total of 3 times. The second verse starts with, after the first chorus, it does like half a verse, and it's the second half of the verse. So it's the version of the verse where you go on this for 2 bars. Then it does the whole verse pattern twice. So the second verse is slightly shorter than the first verse. But that's all there is to the verse. All right, so what I'm going to call the chorus, right? So it's 1 full bar on the D, that same chord, 1st finger on the 3rd fret of the G, 2nd finger on the 4th fret of the D, 3rd finger on the 5th fret of the A. Now the first chorus is all held out, right? The second chorus is strummed, but either way it's 4 beats on this. And then 4 beats on D major 7, that chord, 1st finger on the 3rd fret of the G, 2nd finger on the 4th fret of the A, 3rd finger on the 4th fret of the D. But I might as well. Back to the D for 4 beats for 1 bar. And to the weird G for a bar. 2nd finger on the 5th fret of the D, 3rd finger on the 5th fret of the G, pinky on the 5th fret of the high E. And then now D for 2 beats, D major 7 for 2 beats, E for a full bar for 4 beats. That's for 4 beats. For hours, back to the G for 4 beats. Now a new chord. It's an F sharp major. It's just like the E. It's a bar across all the strings, but now it's off the 4th fret. Right? The second chorus is all the same chords. It's just that now it's strummed. The first chorus ends by going right back to the verse with an instrumental version. That's what I was saying. It's like the second half of the verse, so the version of the verse where you go on the G for 2 bars. At the second chorus ends. So it's a 1 bar that's like the louder bar, and two beats on the D, 2 beats on the D major 7, but strum all the 8th notes that time harder, right? And then that takes you into what I'll call like the outro, or but it's the whole second half of the song. Maybe this is the chorus. I don't know, whatever you want to call this part. So this part, the first chord is bar across the 7th fret. This is an A chord. general strumming pattern you can do here is still all those downs, but you can do this. You can do that. It's the same kind of rhythm as on this chord before, where on the second half of the fourth beat you do a down up on the high strings. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, 2, right? Again, kind of optional, but that's something that's in there, and you can play around with it a little bit. Okay, so it starts with just two bars on this. Then the vocal comes in. You've got right? So I'll take the night shift. Okay, so the second chord is a D. The first time you can hear that she does it as a bar of the 12th fret. When everything gets loud, it might be all open. That's the same chords, an octave different, right? So this or this. You can play either one, but when it gets loud, this one is just for, all the other ones have been for 2 bars. This one's for 1 bar. And then it goes down to the E for 1 bar, and then back to the A. That's that whole section. It does it 1 time, just guitar and vocals. Then it does it 2 times with the whole band. 1 time sung, 1 time with just the right? Then there's 1 last time with the vocal, and that time there's a little variation at the end that takes you to the end, which is when it gets to this one, it gets to the F. Then it goes to the E, and then it's going to go to D. And you could do either all open or the 12th fret. Instead of going back to the A. This for 2 bars. A chart, a tab of some kind available on my Patreon, so you can check that out at the link in the description, and let me know if you have any questions or comments or requests, and I hope it all made sense, and thank you so much for watching.